All of the insecures crave relationship more than a secure does. The challenge is they don't know they have a blind spot and that they're self-sabotaging. They have 8 stages to their relationship. Stage 1, they want someone to love. And stage 2, now I've found somebody, I've solved my problem. They're in the honeymoon stage. Now the honeymoon stage is coming to an end. The dopamine is slowing down. They're not processing oxytocin the same way. Now they're thinking about leaving the relationship. Stage 3. Stage 4, they've made the decision. I'm going to leave the relationship. Stage 5, they actually leave the relationship. Stage 6, they are actually excited that they've left the relationship. They're getting the dopamine again. Why? They've regained their independence. I've taken back my life. Then stage 7 comes, remorse and regret. Stage 8, I'm alone again. I'm feeling lonely. And they start the vicious cycle over and over and over again.
Welcome back to the Piece of Grit podcast, guys. We got something special for you today. For all of my young men, my young people, my young women out there, we have a conversation which I think is the most relevant than it's ever been for the loneliness epidemic that we are currently going through in the United States of America. Today, we're going to be talking about this book, The Attached. This is the science of adult attachment and how it can help you find and keep love. And we have Chris here to talk about it. Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Pleasure, Jamie. Glad to be here.
So my first question is, why are people so lonely these days?
It's a great question. It's a societal change that's taking place over a period of time. I'll start with the attachment theory. The attachment theory was written by Dr. Bowlby back in 1969 originally. It's been updated a couple of times over the last 50 years. Again, Mary Ainsworth back in 1984, then updated it. Since then, there's been continued updates. We'll go backwards in time. Prior to World War II, Western civilization had developed a family nucleus model. We had the traditional family nucleus was a man and woman came together. They produced children. The man was the hunter, the gatherer, go out and provide for the family. The woman would be the caretaker and the home provider and the home manager. As I said, that's a full-time job. That gave children the opportunity to do what we call securely attach to their caregivers. Between the ages of 0 and 3, we formulate most of our brain power, for lack of a better term. 85% of our subconscious is developed. And that subconscious is what's going to cause you to make all decisions you make for the rest of your life. Fast forward World War II, what happened? We sent millions of men overseas for battle, and women went into the workforce at a much deeper level. Factories, farms, they were doing all the production for it. What happens when you show capitalists how to make money? They're going to do it. And that's what happened. We doubled not doubled, but we increased the size of our GDP drastically by introducing women into the workforce. Prior to World War II, you could live as a family on a single income. Fast forward to today, it's literally impossible for most Americans to live on a single income. I think we can all agree upon that.
For sure.
That's causing more and more women. Now it's estimated, I'm guessing around 65% of all women are working full-time in today's society. And that's causing what we're going to discuss today, broken attachments between children and their caregivers.
Because I've never realized, being that we're in our early 20s, I didn't realize what it was going to be once college was over. But you went from kind of being in this social circle, and I'm not just talking about men and women, I'm talking about, male friendships and the whole slew of different relationships that you build through that time. But you go from this nucleus of community to the second you're done with college, if you don't plug into something, you are pretty much isolated for the first time in your entire life. If you, went to live with your parents, went to college, had this entire basically social environment kind of bestowed upon you, you kind of take it for granted. 4 years goes by, boom, you're on your own. All of your dating opportunities minimized probably by 80%, 90%. The time that you spend with your friends goes down innumerably, and you're in this position now where you have to do things to go out and meet people when before just purely existing, you were running into people. Why do you think in our 20s that specific transition is so hard for people?
The first thing I'd relate to is social media. I think social media is poisoning people to a certain extent. You either see the worst or the best in people. You don't see the middle. I think you've had guests on before that discussed that. I think that's playing a huge role. What we're going to discuss today is playing a huge role in the way people attach to others in relationship, and why they avoid it or they embrace it. So that would be my first thought on it.
And we started talking about it a little bit the other day, but what are there's 4 attachment theories, right?
Okay.
What are the 4?
We'll go there. Dr. Bowlby wrote Attachment Theory. It was published, I believe, in 1969, if I remember correctly. He determined at that point there were 3 different attachment styles. It changed the whole game from a psychological perspective and how people conduct their relationships and why they conduct their relationships. Those 3 styles are secure, anxious, and avoidant. Then Mary Ainsworth came along, I believe it was 1984, and updated it and created 2 subcategories of avoidant. Basically, you have a graph. Secure and insecure are your first 2 definitions. Secure is the easy one. I've tested 3 times for attachment theory. I've been defined as a secure. We're very comfortable in our own skin. We can be very active in a relationship. We do desire deep relationship, but it's not a requirement of ours. We can be independent, but not overly independent. We just seem to be very balanced. We're the ones they call the boring ones in relationship. We don't like to fight, so we won't engage in that. We'll participate a little bit, and then at some point we'll shut down and say we're not doing that anymore. And we're not ones who are going to overlove on somebody. We're just balanced in the middle. We see the value in having a long-term relationship. Most secures go into deep long-term relationships early in life and stay there. They're becoming a dying breed, though. Secures, prior to a decade ago, they were estimating about 50% of the American Western civilization was a secure. Now they're estimating it's down between 35 and 40%.
I think that, going back to your point on social media, I think that it has almost solely to do with social media. My reasoning behind that is because it used to be, I mean, I'm about to get married in February, and being in a relationship, it's not always easy. In most cases, it's actually the harder choice than being single. In a lot of cases, actually.
Agreed.
And it's interesting being somebody that identifies more in that secure kind of mindset, because social media makes it so acceptable to go on my phone and go, well, there's all of these options out there.
Correct.
Why am I wasting my time fighting over the same, oh, you didn't take the trash out, oh, you didn't do that. Why am I worried about that when I could just go out on the open market? And it seems, keyword, it seems to be so, there's so many people, there's so much. The reality is, at least my assumption is, just because it's out there does not mean it's any more or less accessible than it was back in World War II, like back in that time. So I think it's interesting being a secured person, being in a relationship, feeling like I'm a part of a dying breed, and then constantly being tested with, you know, girls shaking their ass on Instagram. It's like, Jesus Christ, this is not they don't make it as easy as they once did.
Correct. And then you add the factor of the insecure factors that come into play. We talked about secure. Let's talk about the insecure side. There's 3 insecure styles. Anxious, we'll start there. Anxious are, and we talked about this the other day, they're the ones that pull you in a relationship whenever there's stress. They have core fears. Each one of your insecure styles are going to have very core fears. Abandonment is one of the core fears of an anxious person. Rejection. They're always seeking validation in their relationship. They seem very needy. They can become taxing on somebody because they're always pulling on you. Then when something goes awry in your relationship, disagreement, whatever that is, they're the ones that pull you in. The great man upstairs has a 6th sense of humor. He's designed it to where anxious and avoidance are heavily attracted to each other. They're like magnets, but they think completely differently. And that's one of the challenges that's happening in a lot of relationships today, and why I think it's very important people start understanding attachment theory so they can better understand themselves and how to communicate with their partner at a higher level, we'll see more success in relationships. Look at America right now. Our divorce rate is what, 51, 52% of all marriages end in divorce?
Yeah.
That's 3 times the amount of the next closest country. That should be telling us something.
Crazy.
We have countries in this world, obviously because of their laws and their beliefs, that have a 3 or 4% divorce rate. Why we're at 51% and maybe, I think it's England is around 18%. That's a drastic gap. There's a reason for that.
That's insane.
And so kind of going back a little bit, like what causes you to fall into a specific attachment style? Is it how you were raised, your childhood? Is it something that you're born with? Can you change what attachment style you're in?
Great questions, all of them. Yes, it is. It's from birth, from 0 to 3 years old. We attach to our families. We attach to our caregivers, your mother and your father. 85% of your brain power, subconscious, is all developed during that time frame. How you attach to your caregivers will dictate how you attach to relationships later on in life. Secures have a secure attachment to their caregivers. The insecures have what we would refer to as a broken attachment. Something was wrong there. Let's use a disorganized. Usually in a disorganized, somebody's either a parent is an alcoholic or a drug addict, right? One day they're angry and withdraws. The next day they're happy. There's a lot of confusion in that attachment. Disorganized have both anxious and avoidant inside of them. They're the ones that you have to really understand at a high level if you get into relationship with them. One minute they're pulling you closer, the next minute they're pushing you away. Anxiouses are easy to identify. They're the ones that pull. Then you have your dismissive avoidance. Your dismissive avoidance are always the one that separate, push away from you. And that's where we talked about it the other day. You wind up in that push-pull type of environment.
Yeah.
One party's pulling, the other one's pushing away. And the battle starts. And until both parties can actually attach there and have a conversation about, okay, you're feeling this, I'm feeling this. I think I even role-played out with you guys a situation with that.
Yeah.
Where if an anxious and an avoidant were in a relationship and they are heading a time of troubles, I recommend to them create a relationship circle. Okay, you've got these boundaries around yourselves. You may wind up on the inner walls of that circle, but you're not going to break that circle. Now the avoidant will role play. You're the avoidant. You're going to want to take some space. Get away from me. I'm not liking this right now. You're the anxious. Come over here. Come over here. It would be very smart for you two to sit down and have a conversation and say, look, I need a little space. I know you need my attention because that's going to make you happy. Let's take a half-hour timeout. I'm going to go cool off and get my space. You go get your emotions, because they're usually the emotional ones, under control. And then we're going to meet back here in a half hour and we're going to have a conversation about this. Then what we're going to do is create a solution that works for both of us. And then the key ingredient is learning how to forgive, and the operative word, forget.
So I had this conversation with my fiance the other day where, when you're building a life together, I think you have this idea that it's one of my favorite ideas that one of my mentors told me. He's like, nobody is responsible for your emotions besides you. So we get into relationships where you are expecting, and when I started dating my current fiance at 19, I did it because I wanted somebody to fix some of that for me, right? That's and I'm not alone in this. Most people get into relationships to solve problems that only they can solve. They go to other people to fix themselves. And
absolutely,
I'm lucky that I have a very, very patient fiance who grew up with me and allowed me to kind of develop my own self and build my own confidence. But over that time, and this is another thing I want to get your take on, you can shift. You literally can go from anxious avoidant to a secure anxious, just based on, your own personal self-development. How over the duration of a long-term relationship, do you see, and does this book talk about the shifts that occur throughout, or is it usually pretty standard?
Think of it this way. We program our brains from 0 to 4 years old.
Yeah.
If we can program from 0 to 4, we can always reprogram it. It takes effort. The first thing is going to be awareness, understanding who you are and what makes you tick within the relationship. Then being able to have open and honest conversations with your mate about this is who you are, this is who I am. How do we get together and make this all work? There's also a hormonal portion to all of this. Each insecure style will have sometimes what I would call a hormonal deficiency. Let's use an avoidant for an example. They are great love bombers. They will love all over you in the beginning stages of the relationship. You're going to think it's awesome. When they thrive off of dopamine, they're great givers of oxytocin, the love hormone. For whatever reason, they don't receive oxytocin the same way the other styles would. That lack of oxytocin receiving causes them to not produce GABA. I don't know if you're familiar with hormones. GABA is what regulates your cortisol. What is cortisol? Your stress hormone. So if you're not producing GABA to regulate your cortisol, you're going to go into hyperdrive. Your cortisol is going to go into hyperdrive, and you're always going to be stressed out.
I want to double click on that because that lives in being an entrepreneur. So I always talk to my fiance back when I first started this company, and I would always show up stressed. I mean, I've been building businesses for like 4 years now, and there isn't a day where there isn't something stressful going on.
Absolutely.
And and going back to what I previously said about the relationship or like the idea that somebody is going to fix something for you. I'm going into something stressful. My expectation is when I get home that stress is relieved. But as somebody, now that you just said that, I don't get oxytocin the same way that I give it. Like I don't feel it the same way. And I always have this conversation with my fiance where it's like, I don't feel X, Y, and Z right now from you. Most of the time it's not even her fault because she is the best home manager. She is the best caretaker. She fits the bill in all these other ways. And that's all below the surface. I don't see that on a day-to-day. I just show up at home, and if the trash hasn't been taken out and I told her the trash is getting taken out, now all of a sudden, we're in a little bit of a tiff.
Right.
And that stress for me, my expectation is I show up, everything's good. But that's not real life.
No.
So explain to me.
It's not.
Based on that scenario, where do I need to gain some awareness, or somebody that's listening that can relate to that, where can they gain some awareness and make their situation a little bit better?
Again, I'm always going to read the book. That's a great book about attachment theory. There's a lot of videos out there that people can do. I've learned people learn one of 3 ways. They either read, watch, or listen. We have our preferred learning styles. We talked about this last week. I've studied human behavior in different aspects. I'm certified in some of them as well. Individual performance. And through that process, I learned that we learn, again, one of 3 ways: read, watch, or listen. So if you're a reader, read the book. If you're one that likes to watch, go on YouTube. There's some great resources out there.
Like this podcast?
Adam Lane Smith. Yes, like this podcast. Adam Lane Smith would be somebody to follow. Thais Gibson is another one who's very knowledgeable in this. Chris Settler would be another one. That they're all talking about this. They have relationship coaching companies where they're actually teaching people about this and how to better perform in relationships.
Would you recommend people to get a relationship coach, a counselor at an early stage in their relationship?
It depends if you're having challenges. 2 secures come together, they're not going to have issues. They're very comfortable in their own skins. They're a dying breed, but they're very comfortable in their own skins. And they know how to, first and foremost, we have to learn how to self-regulate ourselves. You talked about that a couple of seconds ago. Very good comment. We have to learn how to self-love ourselves. And then we also have to be willing to help supply needs to our mate. One of the biggest challenges I see in today's society is we keep talking about how this dependency is bad, right? We've all been hearing that. That is a bunch of bullshit. Okay. There's a reason there are forms of dependency that are bad, but there are also forms of dependency that are very good. That is one of the primary reasons we enter into a relationship. 2 people come together. I want to obtain something from you: companionship, physical connection, emotional support, teamwork. The word team to me is an anchorman. Together, everyone achieves more. And that holds true in a one-on-one relationship with your spouse.
Now, so with all the attachment styles, for people that are out there in the dating world, myself,
All of us.
are you meeting a girl? She's beautiful. She's nice. She does everything right. But you're like, you know what? It seems like she's an avoidant attachment style. This is not going to work long term. I have to walk away from this now, or vice versa. Are you looking for, say, I'm a secure? Are you looking for a specific other attachment style that, say, would fit that? Like, how would you explain to someone how to go about that?
I want to start out by saying, understand there's no right or wrong in this. We're just different. The insecure attachment styles they're not bad people. They have a blind spot that they're not aware of. They program their brain between 0 and 4 to react a certain way, either because of neglect or what they perceived as neglect. That attachment was broken to their caregivers, and that's affecting their lives moving forward. They do not realize that this is happening. They don't realize they're self-sabotaging their relationships. They think what they're doing is normal, and it is to their normal. I mean, what is normal? There is no such thing. Normal is everyone's perception. They have programmed their brain a certain way to react a certain way within relationships. So I try to go into it with an open mind. Now, I have a level of knowledge on this. I'm not, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm not a 10 on this. I'm probably about a 6, where most people might be a 2. I've spent the last 15 years studying attachment. That book came out in 2010. I started, the first time I was exposed to attachment theory, I was 22 years old approximately. My grandmother asked me to go for an assessment. I had a very close relationship with both my grandmother and grandfather. The reason she asked me to do that is because the first 5 years of my life, most people would define as total chaos. I was separated from my father at age 1. I was separated from my mother at age 5, and I'd done 2 cross-country moves from New York to Cali and Cali back to New York, all by the age of 5. Very disruptive potentially for a young child. From age 5 moving forward, I lived with my grandparents. My grandparents were very old-fashioned, products of the Depression. They were very loving, caring. They were very active in my life. So from 5 to 25, when you're fully grown, let's say, I had a very secure environment. But when I was around 21, like most young men, I was not interested in a serious relationship. And because my grandmother in her mindset, she thought there might have been something wrong with me. So God bless her. She sent me for the assessment. It came back that I was a secure. And the doctor felt at that point that the reason that happened was because I was in a very secure environment from age 5 to age 25. And that first 5 years, I'd reprogram my brain, or they helped me reprogram my brain and the way I would react to things. Revisited attachment theory when the book came out. I'd just come out of a 20-year marriage. It was very distraught about it. I'm a secure. I like being in deep, long relationships. Unfortunately, that wasn't able to continue. And the book came out. I read the book. I took an assessment again. Look at that. I'm a secure. Fast forward now, I made a commitment that every 10 years I was going to do the assessment to see if there are any changes. Again,
Have there been any?
No, I had another long-term relationship, about 8.5 years. Came out of that, and about 6 months afterward did the assessment again, and it came back as secure. So I'm very comfortable in my own skin. I don't require a relationship. I want it, if that makes sense. Because I understand the value in it. Look at highly successful people prior to the last 20 years. All of them usually are in very deep, long-lasting relationships. They take that issue off the table.
My mom is searching for her forever partner, but when I was super, super young, she exposed me to all types of successful people, doctors. Like, she was in the medical space, and she told me at a very young age, you want to get ahead in life, find somebody that you can live with for your entire life. Get that solved, and then the rest of your life will open up. And again, dating is a job. It's a legit grind. And this conversations we have all the time, but it's a grind to the point where in most scenarios, and once you get to a certain level in your life, like, you could blink 3 years, a year, 6 months without trying.
Correct.
And then everybody's questioning, well, why am I still alone?
What's wrong with you?
Yeah, like, well, why am I still? Well, it's just because there's no effort to actually find that partner. How, since that you have been in a long-term relationship, came out of one, went into another one, how did you source those people? How did you find your next?
The old-fashioned way. It really happened through either my place of employment. I mean, yeah, both times actually was place of employment, what I was doing for a career. I shared with you, I was an interim CEO in the beginning stages of my career for an event management and graphic design, what you guys do, media company. I wound up marrying his daughter, the guy that I was helping out.
Wow.
And then the next time around, one of my agents, you've learned about my 32-year real estate career. I was running very large offices here. I had about 500 agents under my broker's license at the time. And one of my agents asked me to do the DISC profile. Remember that individual for performance? The DISC profile is used to identify talent and place them based on their strengths, not their weaknesses. And so I would do a DISC profile on every person being hired in the company. I think you actually talked to somebody who just hired a company in their firm. You interviewed somebody and they talked about bringing somebody in to analyze and how to effectively communicate as a team.
Brenda, yeah.
Yeah, one of your guests.
Yeah.
I do that for businesses and specifically in real estate. So I met Sophie through doing a DISC profile. One of my agents contacted me, said, I'm looking at hiring this person for a specific position. I know you have a system for identifying talent, their strengths and weaknesses. Would you mind administering the DISC on them? Absolutely not. This is my service to my agents. So I got together with Soph and we did the DISC. It was a 3-hour process. First, it's 25 questions you answer. Out of that 25 questions, I wound up printing out a report of about 30-something pages all about you. And then we do, and what we do is a validation at that point. And you're confirming that what the assessment says about you is accurate. She confirmed about 90% of the assessment was highly accurate. So now we have a good reading. Then from there, I start telling you all neat things about yourself, and you look at me and go, how in the world can you possibly know that? That was about a 2-hour process. By the end of it, we could tell her, we didn't know there was a connection at that time. It was about a year later that she approached me about some challenges she was having in real estate. She said, you're a pretty high-level real estate coach. Would you mind sitting down and talking to me? That's when I felt there was a connection. I said, this is an interesting girl. She thinks at a high level. I like people who think at a high level. We went on a date, and we never looked back from the first date on. And we had a really good relationship the first 4 or 5 years. It's usually in the demise of my relationships are usually outside interference coming into the relationship. My first wife, her father, unfortunately, as I say, committed suicide by alcohol. And at 58 years old, that was very devastating to her. That changed her mindset. There's usually 4 or 5 defining moments in your life that change your direction. That was one of the 4 or 5 in her life that changed her direction. So that's the DISC profile, and that's how I wound up finding Sophie. Both of them were work related, to be honest with you. Gym is another place where I've met people. I'm not a big fan of going to nightclubs. I like going out to dinners, but to go sit at a bar and drink all night doesn't excite me whatsoever. And I find when I do that and I meet people in that environment, they're usually not the right people.
I was just going to say that. There's a balance there for sure.
Correct. So it's a personal preference. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I don't judge people based on anything. I don't believe in doing that. If that's your lifestyle, enjoy it. If it's working for you, cool. This is the lifestyle I choose to lead.
Something that kind of just stuck out to me, the death by alcohol. So outside of relationships with people, how does your attachment style affect your relationships with vices? Like, are you more likely to be an alcoholic if you're X attachment style? Are you more likely to do these things if you're X? Is it just in relationships, or does it kind of expand out to everything else?
No, I'm not aware of any connection between attachment style and those type of behaviors. You just never know when somebody's going to become an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Or a drug addict. There's a lot of people that say it's genetic. I don't know enough to tell you that that's the fact. Some people say it's emotionally driven. Some people say it's physically driven. There's a lot of different theories on that. I'd actually have to bring on somebody that I know very well that understands alcoholism at a high level to answer that question.
Let's do it.
But I am not aware of your individual behavioral patterns or your attachment style that would have any effect on that.
I'll make a non-scientific jump, at least how I see it. I think the way that we relate with other people directly correlates to how we relate with our vices, right? So at least that's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, if I am a anxious avoidant and I can't seem to connect with somebody, but I don't know that I'm anxious and I don't know that I'm avoidant. I don't have any awareness of that. Yeah. I'm always assuming that there's something quote unquote wrong with me. Why isn't this person loving me? Why isn't this relationship working out? Why can I not connect with so-and-so? Those types of questions, and then the lack of self-discovery to solve those problems, at least in my opinion, I think that that's where, if it hasn't already formed, that's where that stuff starts to take up. I think most vice problems, as somebody who has dealt with family that's been, has abused drugs and alcohol, it mostly comes down to unresolved issues inside themselves, that those holes inside yourselves, and then trying to find things to fill them, whether it be people, alcohol, drugs, what have you. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you. I mean, time is either your best friend or your worst enemy. If you're not using time properly, there's more opportunity for things to go awry. And why I've taught my children that stay busy is one of the things. Move a muscle, as I say to them. Use your brain. Those are very important things to do every day of your life. You'll go stale. Going back to the attachment theory in your question, there is a probability of that. One of the things that the insecures, all styles, they all suffer from some sort of self-esteem issues. Differently. They're all different. Anxious. They fear abandonment, criticism, all of those type of definition things. Avoidance are just the opposite. Avoidance fear being open, showing vulnerability, loss of independence. You can identify an avoidant usually pretty quickly because the higher level avoidant they are, the more they're apt to pronounce that they're an independent person. They'll go out of their way to do that. What's really neat is you can be, once you understand, and again, I only know this at a medium grade level, I'd say 5.5, 6. Once you understand these things, you'll be amazed how an anxious will describe themselves to you. They don't know why, but they will describe themselves. An avoidant will describe themselves. I shared with you, I was in a relationship with an avoidant recently. Within the first 4 months of us hanging out together, she fully described herself as an avoidant. She told me I'm highly independent. She told me that I stuff things and then I explode and then I shut down. You're describing an avoidant to the T. She had all those actions. She was a love bomber. I mean, being in relationship with this woman was absolutely amazing at the honeymoon stage of it. Everything is going awesome. What you don't know is behind the scenes, once the honeymoon stage is over, something triggers them. Every one of the insecure styles has a trigger. When that trigger happens, specifically with an avoidant, they go from looking at all the positive things that you've introduced to the relationship, and now they're focusing on the flaws.
And that creates more problems. What you focus on.
And they don't communicate that with you. That's the biggest problem. All of your insecure attachment styles struggling communicating and showing their vulnerabilities to their mate. And unless you have an understanding with this, it's very hard to cut it off at the pass.
And when you have a relationship that doesn't necessarily go well because they don't have the awareness of their attachment style, and if there's no awareness, there's not an ability to be able to solve that.
They can't self-correct.
They can't self-correct. But I'm interested to know, I talk to a lot of people, sometimes when you put yourself out there and you get into a relationship and it's 4 months and the first couple months you're like, man, I'm so in love with this person. Then as eventually things happen, you get out of the honeymoon stage and before you know it, that relationship ends and there's this deep, deep heartbreak.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get past that?
Self-regulation. You have to understand that we don't control other people's actions. We only control our own. So it doesn't matter what they did. We're going to have a reaction to that. Secures will react usually only when attacked or when they're gaslit. Otherwise than that, the in-between, they don't react much to. You attack a secure, they're going to defend themselves. You gaslight a secure, they're going to let you know about it. You just gaslit me, for crying out loud. What the hell did you need to do that for? There was no reason to do that. Secure people are very comfortable in becoming friends sometimes with mates that didn't work out. The other styles can really struggle with that depending upon which style they are. So it's insecures will always try to pull you. You're anxious, will try to pull you closer. But at some point they will shut down as well because they feel they start abandoning themselves and they breed their own fear of abandonment. And then they'll blame you for it. Avoidants are known for it. They will self-sabotage their relationship and then they'll turn around and blame you for it. And it's amazing that those things happen. We need to be aware of that. That can be solved.
Going into that point, my fiance and I have broken up over our 5-year relationship 2 times.
Mm-hmm.
The second time, it was all solvable. Everything is solvable if you actually want to take the time to solve it. But she said something to me that like rocked my world. And she was like, what you're doing right now is you're pushing me away. And if you do this, you are going to end up just like everybody else that you've like all, your family, these people that have ended up in broken families because they just pushed that pain away. And once I got to the point that I wanted to quote unquote get out, then I'm self-sabotaging. Then I'm saying whatever I need to do to end the relationship, to make sure that there's no possibility that it comes back. I'm just so lucky that she understood what was happening and was easily able to read between the lines a little bit. But I think most people, when they are in relationships and they don't have that awareness, that's when, it ends and it never comes back in a lot of cases.
Yes. And then what you described, that push away, is a signal of a avoidant first. Anxious will do it as well. It just takes them a lot longer to get to that point because all of the insecures crave relationship more than a secure does. And they do truly want to be in a deep, loving relationship. The challenge is they don't know they have a blind spot and that they're self-sabotaging. Use the avoidant for an example. They live on the relationship death wheel. I think I mentioned this last time to you. They have 8 stages to their relationship. First, they're lacking. They want someone to love. Stage 1. Stage 2. Now I've found somebody. I've solved my problem, right? They're in the honeymoon stage. Now the honeymoon stage is coming to an end. That triggers them. The dopamine is slowing down. They're not processing oxytocin the same way. They go from looking at all your pros and now all of a sudden they're looking at all the little flaws you have. Now they're thinking about leaving the relationship. Stage 3. Stage 4. They've made the decision. I'm going to leave the relationship. Stage 5. They actually leave the relationship. The interesting part is stage 6. They are actually excited that they've left the relationship. They're getting the dopamine again. Why? They've regained their independence. I've taken back my life. Then stage 7 comes. Remorse and regret. Stage 8, I'm alone again. I'm feeling lonely. And they start the vicious cycle over and over and over again. They'll actually do what we call monkey branching. They'll swing from one relationship to the next one, always seeking their dopamine. As soon as the dopamine runs out and they sense there's a problem, one they're self-creating, they'll move on to the next relationship in some cases, especially young avoidance. There's more men avoidance than women, but there is a surge recently of seeing more women avoidance.
Why do you think that is? That there's more men?
That's our natural instincts. Women are usually a little more sensitive than men, so they tend to be the anxious one, at least in the past. And men are usually the ones that are a little more ego and strong-driven, so they're more easy to push away from a relationship. Men typically are a little more independent than women. That's changing. Society's changing, but historically we've been more independent than women. So, what's the sad part about this? The number of secures is shrinking now in our society. So we're breeding more and more. We're transferring these detached or broken attachment styles onto our children.
Well, it's because, again, it's all comes down to, as you're saying, that 0 to 4.
Correct.
So if we're getting to a point in society where there's less awareness, there's less long-term relationships, there's less secures out there, that's only just going to continue to compound on itself. And you'll be in a position, before you know it, where we're just living in a world filled with anything but secure.
And transactional relationships only.
Let me ask you about
no
that.
Fulfillment.
What's your opinion on flings? Like, I just hang out with them. Like, is that destructive?
I don't think so. It's a personal choice. As long as both parties are open and honest with each other, there's nothing wrong with it. It's when both parties are not open and honest with each other, and you're doing it for one reason and he's doing it for another reason. And there's these underlying things going on in the backdrop that one or both parties are not aware of. That is the key to having any successful relationship with your children, with your parents, mates, being open and honest and being able to discuss your vulnerabilities. And people struggle with that. Maybe you don't want to. Maybe you don't want to do that.
What about the guys that say, I would share how I feel, but I'm worried about coming off as weak to my mate?
That's where you have to look at the person across from you. If you're in relationship with a secure and anxious, they're going to look at it as strength. An avoidant who values independence is going to look at it as weakness. So it depends on who's sitting across the table from you. Those that seek independence or avoidance, anytime you show vulnerability, which is actually a strength to be able to do that, they view it as a weakness. So it really depends on who's across the table from you. You do that with an anxious, you're going to be feeding right into them. They're going to love it. They're going to embrace that. You might actually cause them to start opening up by doing that. So that's where people, you asked earlier if people can change their attachment styles. Absolutely they can. If we program our brain from 0 to 4, we can reprogram it. A couple of different ways you can reprogram your brain in attachment style. One is go to therapy, do the heavy lifting, as I say. You try to do it as an individual. The actual easy way to do it is while you're in with a relationship. And that's where couples get together, have this conversation, and then start the open dialogue. Okay, this is who you are. This is who I am. These are the things that we have to be aware of with you. These are the things we have to be aware of with me. How do we create a plan to make sure that we don't go the way things are dictating, the way it's destined to be right now? We have to change our direction. If you want things to change the way you think. That would be my first comment. Everything starts upstairs. And we don't know what we don't know, which is a blind spot. And each one of those insecure attachments has a specific blind spot, needs to build awareness to that, and then communicate that to their partner.
That was one of my favorite things that you've said so far on this podcast, because I've obsessed over this idea of our thoughts create our reality. And I 100%. Don't think anybody actually realizes that. And the reason why is because it sounds so cliche when you hear it. Oh, your thoughts create your reality. Oh, okay, gotcha. But what does that actually mean? If I have a thought, that turns into most likely what I say. And if it's not what I say, then chances are I'm stuffing something down, which is just going to create some pent up resentment, whatever it ends up being. But if you are not connected with your thoughts, your words, your actions, and then the results that you create for yourself, you're going to feel out of line. And so instead of somebody's going to hear that and be like, all right, well then I'm just going to say everything that comes to my mind. I'm one of these people where I'm like, all right, if I want to be more connected to what's going on up here, I'm just going to say more things that I'm feeling in here and then talk it out loud, not realizing that the problem is not the fact that I wasn't saying it. It's because the actual thoughts themselves are flawed and they're coming from a insecure, anxious, avoidant state, whatever the state may be.
I 100% agree with you. I've taught my children and I've coached a lot of people, both professionally and personally. There's one phrase you'll hear come out of my mouth all the time. Whatever you think, you're right. It's very simple. If You guys just did some heavy marathoning, right?
Yeah.
I assure you, if you didn't think you could complete that, you would not have. Period. The end. If you think you can do something, you have a 50% chance of winning. If you think you can't do something, I guarantee you're not going to do it. And I think you guys have had experiences with that. The same thing holds true in relationships and this whole attachment theory. If a party wants to self-focus on themselves and actually work on it and become a secure, they can. They just have to first believe it's possible. They have to do the research and the study, and then they have to apply the theory.
You mean our life can get better if we work at it? It is a crazy idea.
I think something...
That's one of the connectors we all had when we first came together. You guys are extremely learning-based, which I try to be as well. And you understand that there's room for improvement. You're always... Personal performance, we talked about this, and how to perform at a higher level as a human being, both physically, mentally, emotionally, within relationship, all of that. That was a really unique conversation we had, and I appreciate it. I like being around high-minded people that think the same way. And
we appreciate that.
So
I think something really interesting you said to me outside the other day was like, with all these attachment styles and everything, it's like you want to work on it. The trick here is, in order to work on it within a relationship, you have to be in a relationship. Like, you have to do the actions as they're going. You can't like think about it and say, I'm going to change this for my next one. Like, you have to do the work within the relationship, which is the...
Yes, there's different debates on this.
Yeah.
You can change your attachment style individually. You're going to go into a counseling, things of that nature. Thais Gibson has a great program that she can help you reprogram your brain. I don't know how long it takes, but she has a whole system on that. Historically, you have a better opportunity to change your attachment style while you're within relationship, because now you have a partner that cares, right? And you're going to have conversation. A lot of heavy lifting is going to happen in that. If everyone becomes open and honest and say, this is who I am, these are my fears, you got to show vulnerability. Everybody has them. Secures don't have them as much as the others, but secures have fears too. They just don't express them as much, and it doesn't affect them as much.
So there's going to be our audience listening. They're striving to be high performers. They're striving to be the next greatest this, the next greatest that. Somebody's going to be listening to this and go, guys, I don't need to worry about my relationships right now. That's not my focus. Why should I care about this right now? I'm not in a relationship. I don't want to be in a relationship. Why should I care? Chris, why should I care?
It's been proven that you're going to live a longer and happier life if you are deep in relationship. So if you look at lifespans of people who are single for an extended period of time versus those that are deep in a long-lasting relationship, you live an average of 7 to 10 years longer. You're happier, your emotional health is better. So there is a value, I guess would be my point, to being in one of those relationships. You're right. Today, I mean, I have examples, my partner, my son, they're all approaching 40 years old. They want nothing to do with relationships. They're focused on themselves. They're focused on their businesses. They're focused on making money. I caution them that you're probably affecting your health. So you have to think of the long game. Too many people are about what's happening today. What about the big picture?
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about it, longevity. That's what I love to focus on, is how I'm going to live a longer, happier, healthier life with no illness, and have emotional wellness.
We were talking about it the other day. I don't know how true it is, like source-wise, but we read a stat that 1 in 4 people now will be single for the rest of their life.
It wouldn't surprise me that we turn into 50-50. There's projections by 2040 that 50% of the people will stay single.
Oh, with these AI girlfriends and these sex bots that are starting to come out, like people hear
experience.
Okay, here's the craziest one. I was reading recently a couple of articles on it. 60% of men under the age of 30 are not having sex right now. That is insane. I don't know about you, but
say that again.
60% of all men under the age of 30 are not having sex today.
Are you kidding
Just like
me?
by choice, or you're saying?
Yeah, by choice. They're playing video games. I can't tell you what the reason is. Go research it. You'd be surprised of the articles being written on this, and the YouTube stuff that's being produced on this.
It's
There's a
insane.
disconnect. between young men and young women.
And we wonder why young men are
Big
so much
disconnect.
more violent these days. And I'm not even saying that like, but like, you don't know, and you know, we're talking about real shit here, but like, you don't know how badly your body, especially as a man, needs that physical intimacy.
Correct.
Just to feel like a functioning human being.
It's
like
a health issue.
It's crazy that it even it's if you have a partner that truly knows you, they'll look at you and go, I know what you need right now. Like genuinely, because there is such a difference. And to hear that, we wonder why crime is at an all-time high. We wonder why kids are like suicide rates have never been higher. We wonder why all these things are coming to pass, but then you're telling me that 60% of men under the age of 30 aren't having sex.
Well, yeah, they're developing "I'm not good enough" mindsets.
It's crazy.
They're seeing all the people and the girls on Instagram and
OnlyFans is rotten.
all of that is affecting our society in a negative way, and we're going backwards. We're not going forwards.
And the huge thing another thing we talked about recently is like we don't know what the effects of like these things on like OnlyFans and all these new things that are coming out. You don't know what the effects are going to be in 20 years. Like imagine your mother had an OnlyFans. Like you can just look up your mom's name and that's what's popping up on Google. That's crazy. And that's only going to make this whole thing so much worse.
Continue to spiral in what I consider a negative direction.
It's funny because what you were talking about back in pre-World War II, before this all came to pass, I had a conversation with my fiance when we first started dating. I was like, what does true satisfaction in your life look like? And she's like, I just want to be an awesome mom. I want to be a wife. I want to be a caretaker. I want to fill that role specifically. This is the crazy part that I don't think people realize. Most women, if we're using our biological predispositions, we're designed, at least over the entire duration of human existence, to be like women are to be in that role. At least that's what you're saying.
That's what Western society developed as a model for the family nucleus until World War II.
And then,
I'm
with
not
that
going to
being
create the
said,
rules, but that's what it was.
You have women who are young, impressionable, don't know what they want to do in their life. They're trying to fill a void. They're told that they need to go out in the workforce and start making money. And then you have these girls that are like, well, do I want to go serve and go, like work at a restaurant? Do I want to go be a secretary, or would I rather just show my tits on the internet and make a ton of money doing it?
Travel the world, private jets.
But that's a legit, there's a girl right now that makes $40 million a year on OnlyFans. That is more than most professional athletes. And she's doing that a year based on, no offense to her, it's not like it's based on a skill set or something. It is just based on your physical appearance, which before OnlyFans was even a thing, was only known, and before social media was only known if you had an intimate relationship with somebody. Correct. That's insane.
And it's also insane on the other side of it, where it's like, who's spending $40 million a year on this? That's fucking insane. And
well,
like
all those
videos,
20 to 30 year olds that are not having sex and they're not in relationship. Now you know kind of probably where they're going.
And the craziest thing is,
now the question is, do you know why this is all happening?
Why?
Social media. The existence of the internet.
Yeah.
We went to instant gratification. When I was a kid and I wanted to learn something, I had to go to this place called the public library.
I want to go get a date.
My children don't even know what the public library is. They found this thing called Google.
Yep.
So instantly you can walk up to a computer, type in something, and you're going to get information about this topic. I can't tell you that it's true information. You have to be careful and filter it yourself. But you're going to be able to instantly get gratified. I have a question. I have a need. I go to Google. Boom, here it is. Social media brought that into the relationship, right? How many girls are on, like you said, showing their boobies? They go to Instagram, they're prancing around, doing their thing, and they're all chasing the 1% males.
And then on top of that, with the social media, with the technology, the next step is we lost the art of communication.
That is a dying breed as well.
Like, you don't know how to go talk to somebody.
There's another reason why your 30-year-olds are not dating right now. They don't know how to ask somebody out on one.
Well, so think about it like this. we are designed. I'm reading Psycho-Cybernetics, which is one of my favorite books of all time. But
I'll read it.
It's really one of my favorite books of all time. But it talks about this idea as men, as women, we have a success mechanism that's built into our brain to where we need to conquer, we need to achieve, we need to have a goal, and we need to do something that creates this. So where we were just talking about like what goes into getting a relationship, everything we've said here is work. Everything takes courage.
Absolutely.
Everything takes like faith in the journey and all these types of things. But if I'm a lonely 20-some-year-old and I'm like, damn, I would love to get laid. Well, that seems kind of hard. So you know what? I'm just going to open Pornhub. I'm just going to get this quick off. Oh, it's gone. It's out of my brain.
Instant gratification.
Instead of, you know what? I wouldn't mind getting laid.
Without
All right, I'm going to go out to the bar, or I'm going to go out on 50 dates. I'm going to talk to a bunch of ladies. I'm going to see who I like, who I don't like. Now I got to get to the third date, the fourth date, the fifth date. This one didn't work. Like, it's a lot of work. Why would we want to participate in that if I can just turn on Pornhub and get everything that I think I need?
Yeah, you don't have to do the reps. You don't have to have the fear of rejection. You don't.
None of it.
Another thing that I think social media has like exacerbated is like the ego. So if you're on social media and you see these guys on there that are walking the streets of Miami and they're asking these girls out in it, but they're this good-looking guy, knows how to talk, he's handsome, and then your first immediate thought or whoever's watching is like, I wish I could do that. I can't do that. Like I don't have the skill set to do that. I'm not good looking enough. I don't know how to communicate that well. And it's like you build that up in your head, and then it's like when time comes, you're like, I'm not even going to try because it's not going to work. I'm going to get rejected. I'm scared to get rejected. You don't want to do the reps. You don't want to hurt your ego. You don't want to know if she's going to say no or not. Like the social media thing, it builds up so much and so much and so much, and it creates like you're building a wall between like you and where you want to be, and then you convince yourself that there's no fucking way you can scale that wall.
And
going back to what I said earlier, whatever you think, you're right.
And then you take those guys that actually do take the courageous step and they go outside and they're I'm gonna go talk to girls, and this is where we see these. No offense to them, just these weirdos. Because guess what? Desperation
reeks.
Desperate people do desperate things.
And this is where things get squirrely. This is why we have these insidious things that guys are doing right now in terms of like just gross shit. And why? Because they have the self-image that's like, I can't get it this way, so I might as well try to get it that way, or I'm gonna go and do this now. And then again, once you prove to yourself what you deserve, once you start, this is why, and not to veer the conversation off, this is why I think porn is so dangerous. So
very much
so very dangerous. If you want to talk, Huberman talks about
men and women, actually.
For everybody. You want to talk to like a Huberman and hear about all the neuroscience behind it, by all means. That's not what this is about, but just think about the psychological aspect of, again, that I'm scrolling on Instagram. I see something that makes me feel some type of way. I feel this desire. I feel this need. How quickly am I filling it? Well, for most people, it's less than a half a second. It's one swipe, open up Safari, you're off.
And you're there.
You're done. You're like,
there.
It's like,
it's showtime.
And you got some guys that are spending 30, 40 minutes just to find the right video. I'm not even bullshitting you. Like literally 30 to 40 minutes to find the right video. 30 to 40 minutes, like me and Mike talk about this all the time. It's like 30, 40 minutes is all you need a day just to get the conversations that you want, to talk to the girl, to get a meeting, to get a coffee date. All this is like, it's just time. It's just time. Right. Yet you're spending 30 to 40 minutes
we cannot make more of.
No, it's time and reps.
Time is the most valuable thing we have. And people aren't using it, in my opinion, in the right directions. Going back to your question about young men, I would really like to test testosterone levels in those men under the age of 30.
Significant drop. Because
there's a significant drop from what I can see in testosterone levels. Men are bred to be predators. I know that's going to be very controversial right now, but we are bred to be predators, right? Caveman days, men were the hunters, women were the gatherers, right? We were bred to be a predator. That hasn't changed. Now we've become a lot more sophisticated in life, and the way we process information and the way we handle our business, we're still predators. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's getting society to understand that and managing it, I think, in a positive way that's very important. And that's one of the things I don't think is happening right now.
On the predators thing, though, and I think it's so super important. That's like the only way to get that back a little bit is to do crazy things, like run those races, put yourself in a situation where it's like when we were out there in the woods, like you feel different.
Correct.
Like you're not the same. Like,
you feel primal.
You feel primal. You're out. You're mile 30. You're in the woods. It's dark out. It's 40 degrees. Like you're not the Mike that was watching TV on the couch last night doing nothing. Like you're different. You like tap into that, and then for me at least, and like what we talk about, it's a momentum thing.
I call it beast mode. I'm an adrenaline junkie. I like testing my limits.
And by doing that consistently, not just, you can't just do it once. It can't just be like, oh, I'm going to try this once and then go back to whatever. By doing it consistently, you build that momentum, and then you live that in every other aspect of your life too.
Yes.
And so, I was just missing up.
Now, you asked me a great question earlier that I had a thought on. Specifically for women, you want to bond with a male. Men thrive off of, I think it's called vesperespin. It's a hormone. That is a hormone where we accomplish things together. Men are very much based upon that. You want to really get a high-level connection as a woman with a man, do something together where you're accomplishing a goal or solving a problem. That will cause the man to really seek a very deep, open their mind to a very deep relationship.
Doubling down on that, there's a stat that it's like the average divorce rate is like 50%, but the second you make $1 with your significant other, your chances of divorce go down to like 10%.
Yeah.
Like, so the second you make $1 with somebody, and this is a conversation, I've talked to a ton of successful people, and a lot of them have warned me about this stage that I'm in right now, about getting into a relationship this early. They're like, what are you doing? You're gonna da-da-da-da-da. This is all the stuff. And they started talking about the reasons why, right? So I'm 20-something years old. I love to achieve shit. I love to do crazy shit, and I'm addicted to it. Like a meth addict would be addicted to meth.
Guilty as charged.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm so addicted to motion and pain, suffering, achievement, triumph, failure, all those types of things. Like that's what I feed off of. And what he was explaining to me is your significant other, if you are that type of person, is going to have to find their own purpose that is not directly connected to your success, because
absolutely
individuality and the individual achievement is built in all of us, no matter how it comes out. But in the sense, what he was saying is, he said, how is your significant other going to find value when you are constantly achieving? How are they going to, because everybody wants to shine. And I had this conversation I literally took that. He left me at the end of the conversation basically being like, you're stupid if you get married. Like, you're going to get divorced. It's a foregone conclusion. Take it or leave it. Took that conversation, went to dinner the next day with my fiance, and I sat down across from her and I go, let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
I'm going to achieve a lot of crazy shit in my life. How are you going to get your own self-worth?
You just tapped on a nerve. I was in that situation 3 years into my marriage, my only marriage. My wife lost herself. She was an awesome mother. Great wife, had no identity whatsoever. Was waking up in the morning, putting on the sweatpants, putting her hair up. The days of dolling yourself up had come to an end.
Yeah.
And she literally got lost. And I identified that, and I actually sat down and talked to her about that and said, you got to go do something. I don't care what it is.
How did that conversation go?
Actually, she felt very relieved. Surprisingly, I was concerned about how that was going to go, but she actually felt very relieved that I could identify that, and that I was open to the idea that, go do something. I don't care what it is. Just go do something. You need to have an identity. Right now, you have lost your identity.
And that's one of the things. There's like I told my fiance, because she was like, I want to be an early mom. Her mom had her first kid at 20, and she's like, that's the track that I'm on. And I go, here's again, I didn't grow up in a normal household. My mom was a single mom. She worked her ass off. She accomplished a lot in her life, whatever, but she didn't find a partner. So I don't have the same context that you have. But what I did tell her was, listen, I want to have kids. One of my number one goals is to be the best dad of all time. Like that's, I didn't grow up with the dad. That's all I want to be for somebody. With that being said, your number one goal in life is to be a mother. And I think that's beautiful. I think that's special. But I know you're meant for more. You're not just a mother. So when we start our marriage, we're about to get married in February.
Congratulations.
We're not going to have kids right away. Why? Because I want you to know what it's like. First of all, I want us to know what it's like to be married to each other so that when we bring in a kid to our household, there's security, there's alignment, there's a team there. But also, I want you to just go discover who you are. I'm going to do my best to make sure money's figured out. So whatever the hell you want to do, that's on you. Go out, go achieve, go try, go fail, go do whatever. I don't care. But the second that I can see, and this isn't like I'm holding it, whatever, but like the second I can see that you have your personality based in truly who you know yourself to be, that's when I think we're ready to bring in a family.
To bring a family in.
Yeah.
And that's a very good way to look at it too. Because there's different phases to relationships. You have the honeymoon stage, then you move into the love or intimacy stage. Eventually you move into the marriage stage. Some do, some don't. It just depends on where they get to. I think the same way, and I didn't do that. When I married, I was considered old. I was 27 years old. Now we're talking back in the early 90s back then.
Now it's like 40,
I had people looking at me going, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you married? Today, that's unheard of. Most people aren't getting married until their 30s. Early 30s seems to be about the average.
I hear guys that are like, don't even think about getting married until you're 45. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
My son really had no interest whatsoever about a long-term relationship until he was about 37 or 38 years old. Wow. Zero. He was focused on himself. He was focused on growing his business. He's been very successful. God bless him. Now he's the last 5 years now, he's like, you know what? Yeah, I do see the value in having a long-term relationship, companionship. As he says to me, I don't want to die alone. So he said, it's important for me to get into a relationship now. He sees the value in it and keeping his focus on the other things that he's doing in his life. So that mindset has changed. Hormones are playing a big role in everything that we're talking about. So I do recommend.
What is your opinion on birth control and how that affects the hormones of?
Absolutely, it can have an effect on women in particular who are on birth control. Yeah, that can destroy relationships, or it can make it. Depends on how that prescription, because that's what it is affecting their body.
I think there's not enough discussion about how wildly that affects females.
100%.
When did birth control even come out? It's like
I don't know the answer to that.
30 some odd years, or it hasn't been
70s. So I'm going to say 50s, probably in the 1970s. I think is when. If somebody can look that up, I don't know, but I'm guessing it's the 1970s, late 60s, early 70s. Remember, we had the live free and have sex with everyone generation.
Yep.
Woodstock. So I'm guessing it came about then. That's also when you saw a major push of women's liberation, women's equality. I remember I was about, 7 or 8 years old, and some women came and knocked on my front door. My grandmother was considered very progressive. She owned her own business in the 1960s.
It's crazy.
Dog grooming business. Then she closed that and she opened a photography. She'd always had a desire to be an entrepreneur. That was unheard of at that time for women. That wasn't a very common practice. So women came and knocked on the door who were promoting women's liberation and women's equality. They came in on a Sunday morning to talk to my grandmother. She wound up asking them to leave because she said, don't ever ask me to lower my standards to a man. I don't believe in equality. I believe in individuality, and that you're going to be holding some women back and then propping some women up that don't deserve it. So I will not support anything in regards to women's equality. And that was just her mindset. She was considered very progressive for a time. I was very blessed to have her in my life.
They said early 60s.
There we go. I figured it was sometime in the 60s or 70s.
Yeah, spot on.
I've had frustrating situations where Jordan will go on a new birth control, and it's like I'm dealing with a whole different person. And at first, we didn't know what that was all about.
Hold on.
We didn't know what that was all about. And then I finally had a moment, and I was like, let me see your prescription real quick. Let me go type this into the computer.
Yeah,
what are you taking?
Correct.
Yeah. What are we signing up for? Because you're just going, like, she went to an OBGYN, and they're changing her prescription without talking to her about it.
Crazy.
Correct.
It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. So you're going from one drug to another drug, and you have no idea that this completely affects her hormones and how she communicates and her temperament and all this type of stuff. And I'm sitting here like, well, she's in a shit mood today. I wonder why that is.
I feel like doctors just start throwing 7-syllable words around, and everyone's just like, sure, like, sounds good to me.
I have not participated in modern medicine for over 30 years.
I haven't had a checkup in like 6 years.
So it's just, I was sharing a story earlier with one of your partners. I have taken one prescription medication in the last 32 years.
Yeah,
crazy.
That's awesome.
And you're healthy as could be.
I had my first scare with health just this past year. April, I had blood work done. My numbers were completely out of whack. I think that actually was the reason why my relationship with an avoidant went sideways. Because I was very focused on my relationship. I knew who this person was. I could identify them.
And so that made you want to fix it?
No, actually, I don't believe in fixing people. They need to fix themselves. You can guide them there. You can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yep.
So I felt I had the ability to bring that person there. We had several conversations not about attachment theory or styles, but okay, she described herself to me. I'm very independent. I bottle stuff up. I explode and I shut down. Okay, let's talk about that. Can we make an agreement that when you're starting to feel that process happen, you have a safe place with me? One of the first things you need to do with somebody that has an insecure attachment style is create a safe place for them to be able to communicate. So I emphasized on multiple occasions, you have a safe place to communicate with me. If you need to communicate some ill feelings, I want you to feel comfortable and come talk to me. I don't want you to get into that pattern. Can we agree on that? And yes. Okay, good. So you think you're putting those protections in place to prevent those things from happening. I made 2 commitments to her. I would not judge her based on anything that she said. I would try not to overreact in any capacity. And I would try to keep as much emotion out of it as possible. Pretty easy for a secure. We're pretty good at that. We're pretty level, mellow people. I discovered that I had these health issues potentially going on. Again, I was talking to one of your guys here earlier about that, and the word of the big C word came up, the potential of it. All my numbers were out of whack. My cortisol levels were extremely high. My blood sugars were high. My blood pressure was 152/92. Not good. They want to rush you to the hospital when they hear those kind of numbers. My doctor knows me very well that I'm self-regulated and I've also self-medicined. So he's like, all right, just go home, do nothing. We're going to have to send you for another round test. The maddening part about modern medicine today, this was late May. I called up called the clinic to the testing facility where I was going to go for that test. We're great. We'll have an opening in October. Wait a minute. It's late May. What do you mean October? We're booked solid. We can't get you in until late October. You mean I got to walk around like this for the next 3 months waiting to get to this test? That really took me off my game because for the first time in my life, I had a fear of severe. It wasn't even small. Now we're getting into cancer. Knock on wood, things didn't work out that way for me. I'm very happy they didn't. And we discovered what it was. Hence, I've got my final results on November 1st.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I did November 2nd. Started ketosis. I've lost 30 pounds, so on and so forth.
That's awesome.
My health is much, much better now, so I'm very blessed that way. But going back to the relationship I had, that took me off my game. So I had to shift some of my focus from the relationship over to my health. I didn't disclose to that person that I was having health issues because they had already had a lot of stress. You'd have to understand the relationship we had. They came out of a long-term relationship that was extremely stressful to them. I could tell they had very high stress. She said to me on multiple occasions, "You're my safe place. You give me peace." Very key word. You want an avoidant to say that or any insecure style to say that. but I wasn't 100% focused. Once I got those results, I started focusing on my health a little bit more and getting a little bit of rats on the brain because of, the potential of cancer. And I got off task on that. And that gave her the clear pathway to go right into her avoidant shutdown, her disengagement of relationship. And by the time I got my results, the disengagement basically happened the same week that I got my results. And at that point, I was trying to get that person to come back to the table. Come to the table. Let's talk. Most of these things can be resolved. I'm a big believer that there's 4 or 5 key reasons why somebody should leave a relationship. Physical abuse. Okay, we get it. You probably need to leave that relationship if that person can't correct that action. Infidelity. I get why people leave a relationship for infidelity. Okay. That's between 2 people, whether or not they can survive that. I totally get.
Even in churches, they say infidelity
is a reason to walk. Drug or alcohol use. Now that one I want to be careful with, because if the person is willing to get into rehab and do those things, I would recommend to a spouse hang in there with them and see if they can self-manage, learn how to self-manage themselves to where they're no longer participating in those activities. Somebody who's putting financial abuse on somebody. They're just spending all the money irresponsibly. You may have had relationships like that before, where you get into a relationship with somebody and they have no rhyme or reason as to why they're spending money. They just spend it constantly. If they're not willing to self-correct that and hear you about that, probably need to leave the relationship. When the issues in a relationship are what I call transactional, you didn't do this for me. You didn't do that for me. That is somebody, in my opinion, starting to look at the flaws only that you brought to the relationship rather than looking at the big pictures. Okay, this person brought all this positive into my relationship, right? But now I'm identifying this negative. I want to focus on the negative, when in reality, I should look at the big picture. And there's a lot more positive than negative. I should probably get to the table and talk about the things that I feel are negative. Those things can probably be worked out in 95% of the situations. That's the challenge with insecure attachment styles. They don't know how to get to the table and have that conversation. They're in fear of it.
Don't look at me.
Or they call you mentally abusive. Who knows?
100%. They will all blame you for the negative going on in the relationship.
Oh,
and
man.
It's
Hope
unfortunate.
you're listening right now because we're talking to you.
It's unfortunate that they don't see that they're the root cause of the problems going on. It's a blind spot.
Yeah.
We programmed this all in our subconscious many, many years ago. And until somebody has awareness, what's half to solving a problem? Admitting there is one.
I think it's interesting. For in my own experience, at least, I think that I was almost doing the opposite, looking for focusing on the positives so much that I was neglecting the negatives.
Welcome to potentially being a secure. One of the key differences between a secure and an insecure is secures go into a relationship trusting you from day one. You have to lose that trust. An insecure enters a relationship not trusting anything, and you have to earn their trust. So people who trust out of the gate and see the positive have at least secure tendencies if they're not as secure.
Yeah.
And that is one of the key differences between secure and insecure is how they enter a relationship trust-wise.
Yeah. Damn.
Yeah. I mean, I wish we didn't have one this sort of
I think for people listening, there's so much that goes into this.
We just tapped on it.
We just tapped on it, and we are going to do a series where we go into each one a little deeper specifically.
I'll be happy to come and join you with that.
Yeah, that would be awesome. But I think, especially today, everybody likes things given to them, gift wrapped and handed. So for those watching that want to kind of start getting into this and start learning about what attachment style they're in and maybe their partner is or their family is, what is the first step for someone to take to start going down this road?
Always through education first, right? You guys are learning based on one of the things I've learned about you guys, and I compliment you for that, and so am I. First, learn about who you are. You always have to go internally first. I find whenever there's a problem going on in my life or a challenge, I don't like to use the word problem, but challenges, I need to go inside first and see if there's anything that I'm doing that I should be doing differently that might overcome that challenge.
And that's what nobody wants to do, man.
No, none of us. It's not easy to do, but you should do it. I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
You're going to live a happier and healthier life if you do. Then also learn how to become self-regulating and not requiring somebody else to heal your wounds. Also understand that self-love for yourself. A lot of people are struggling with that. Self-esteem seems to be a big issue or becoming a bigger issue in today's society. And then also understanding it's okay to supply needs to someone else. That dependency issue. Dependency is not an evil word. So I would highly recommend accepting that as part of the equation. We enter into a relationship to gain something from somebody. Something I either need or want. Again, companionship, physical connection, emotional support. That is a good thing. And more people should focus on that. Is being single okay? Yes. Do you want to live longevity? We've talked a lot about longevity. It's medically proven. Okay, talk about sex. People who have sex 5 times a week or more live an average of 10 years longer than people that do not. Period. The end. That is medically proven. Go back and do your homework.
I'll tell you what, 5 times a week is a lot.
Yes, it is. Yeah, no, agreed. Agreed.
That's another job. Jeez.
But if you look at the numbers, those are the numbers.
Honey, we got to do it tonight. I got to live another 10 years.
Yeah. Came up with a good reason, right?
Everybody wants to improve their life, but nobody wants to do the work, right? So
it's always about the heavy lifting, as I say. We got to do the heavy lifting, and too many people have become instant gratification society now.
Yep.
And want somebody else to solve their problems, and that's not going to happen.
It's never going to happen. No one's coming to save you.
Nobody's coming to save you.
I think that's
only the good man upstairs will eventually save me someday.
I think that's a perfect place to put a pin in it.
Yeah.
So we can pick it back up. I do want to go deeper into these attachment styles for sure.
I'll be
happy. Get a little series going. I think this is something that's one, I think is super interesting to us. We're very interested in. I think it's a topic that's not being talked about that should be.
Yeah, and I think you guys are really tapping into a lot of high-level conversations. I cannot emphasize enough, I think it is very important, specifically for like-minded men to come together and start talking about these things.
Yeah.
We have to become leaders, gentlemen, and start changing the way society is going and what direction it is in. And it's going to start one person at a time. And more like-minded people coming together and having these type of conversations on how to perform better as a human being in all aspects of life. That was one of my attractors to sitting down and talking to you guys, because, again, I compliment you. It's amazing at your ages that you're thinking this way. God bless you.
We're lucky. We're lucky because we get to have conversations like this. The fact that somehow in this crazy world that we live in, that we ended up here being able to have these conversations every day and it's our job.
It's awesome.
Come on now.
Yeah.
There's you can be sad for a lot of reasons. It ain't this one. No. So thank you, Chris, for coming on.
Pleasure, guys. I really appreciate it.
Really looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, let's do it again.
And if you guys like this episode, be sure to comment what one of your takeaways are. Are you avoidant? Are you an anxious? Are you secure? Let us know in the comments. And if you did thoroughly enjoy this, please subscribe. Please like. The only way this podcast grows is through word of mouth. So we'd appreciate it if you told a friend about it. You sent this to your significant other. We'd very much appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. And we will catch you on the next one.